My next guest has been called a lot of names. He's a Hollywood transplant to Nashville. You'll recognize him when you see him. Welcome to another episode of Conversations. This is the show where we talk about anything and everything and whatever is on my mind. Today we have a special guest. It's screenwriter, novelist, and I might add award-winning screenwriter and novelist, and journalist, Roger Simon. Help me to welcome Roger Simon to Conversations.
Well, really fun to be here. I'm very glad to be with you. Carol, because I've been a fan of yours for longer than you may have been a fan of mine.
Well, I'm so delighted. I've heard of you for years. I don't mean that in the sense that you've been around forever, but you've been around for a long time. You've been around for a long time, and you fled Hollywood to make Nashville your new home. So give us an idea of
why I did that?
Right, yeah. Why did you do that? Why did you do that?
First of all, it was my wife and daughter's idea, but they were smart. But the second thing is, I was essentially blacklisted by Hollywood in a new way. Now they don't have a specific list, but they know who they're blacklisting.
Are you describing McCarthyism?
Yes, exactly. Because what happened was that around 2003, 2004, I started to form something called Pajamas Media, which is now PJ Media.
Right.
And they didn't, Roger Simon's doing that, and they all went crazy. And all of a sudden, the phone didn't ring anymore. I mean, I was an Academy Award nominated screenwriter, blah, 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 but they weren't interested because, well, Islam is not the only place that has a problem with apostates.
So you got canceled a long time ago?
Yeah, I was one of the first to be canceled.
I was the first in academia to be canceled.
It's a great privilege. Anyway, but after a while, I couldn't live there anymore. And then, of course, Los Angeles became a very unlivable city. Beyond what was happening to me, it was happening to everybody, not just the traffic, but the whole situation, the government becoming kind of an outpost of Beijing and all of that. So we decided to move to Nashville because there are people like you. There are a lot of creative people here, and we knew that, and we like country music, so we came, and we're very happy, by the way, that we did. I've been here now about 2 years and 8 months, something like that, and I haven't regretted it for a day. I went back once to LA in this whole period.
Only once?
Only once. And right now, though, to go back is really difficult. So.
Now, do you live in Nashville proper? Because in Tennessee, you know, we have two big blue cities, yes. Nashville and Memphis, and those are the worst places to live in the whole state by some accounts.
Yes, well, I'm pretty close to Williamson County where I live, which is like going over to the border to fresh air. So I live in the Green Hills area. They don't have a
mandate at this time.
What's that?
They lifted their mask mandate.
Yeah, yes, I know they did, yeah. But I've lifted mine personally a long time ago. I take the risk. But here I am, I'm okay.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I know that you have written for all the major newspapers, but now you are a political analyst for the Epoch Times.
That's correct. I think it's the best place I've ever worked.
I have also been a commentator for them. I think I have 24, 25 articles.
No, I've noticed, of course. A lot of really good conservative thinkers are on there, and I think it's become the premier website for the right, because it's very complete and gives you all the news. I mean, I'm thrilled to be on it, even though I left the company I founded to do it.
Well, one of the reasons that I wanted you to have wanted to have you on the show today is that we had this new presidential administration and all the controversies that surrounded the election. And for conservatives like me, we're trying to figure out what will the next 4 years look like. And so we're hoping that people like you can give us some wisdom and encouragement about how we survive over the next 4 years?
Well, you know, it's a unique situation, so no one can really give you that.
I know.
But I can give you my guess.
All right.
And I think it's time to even be more engaged than ever. But not in a stupid way, of course. But, for example, we've now learned how, in a real way, how important the states were. You know, we read in school, assuming we...
You mean states' rights?
Yes, I mean states' rights. Because, you know, originally, this is a...
We're not supposed to say states' rights, federalism.
Yes, federalism, okay. But we learned, because we're old enough to have actually gone to school when it wasn't left-wing propaganda, we learned this was a republic. Now we really know why it has to be a republic, because I think people who are lucky enough to be living in red states, as we are, this is now time to put tremendous pressure on our officials here in these states to really hold the line and then actually move the line to the right. You know, it's a tricky thing, because a lot of people, you can call them rhinos or whatever you want, talk a good game but don't do it. We got to make sure they do it, and that means holding them to the fire and also threatening to lose their positions in primaries.
Right.
And we have to be able, because if we don't do that, the power of the federal government now in the Biden administration is going to be so strong that they may set this country back to something that's unrecognizable.
Well, that's already happening, and
Yeah.
my concern when it comes to the Republican Party, you have those that we call Republican in name only, the rhinos, but the caliber of some of the ones that are, you know, staunch conservatives, it's not what it should be. And so we it seems like the talent, I hate to say this, is on the other side. We get outmaneuvered all the time. And it's not, you know, like you don't have to be a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon, but for some reason we elect the wrong people.
Yeah, well, you know, I totally agree with that. And I think that the process was that people who are instinctively on the right or libertarian-oriented, as I am, want to go out and do things in life that not necessarily go to the State House and spend all their time arguing. But now is the time that, you know, I think we can learn that from Trump a little bit, because Trump essentially was obviously a businessman who decided, wait a minute, I'm going to do this. Now, not that everybody can be Trump. He's a truly unique individual. However, I think it's time for people, I know you've done it, you've run for office.
That didn't turn out so well.
Well, it could have been better, but nevertheless, I think it's time for people like you, like me, like a lot of people who never considered it, to go ahead and think about doing it.
Well, we're going to follow up with that thought after a word from our sponsors.
Yeah.
Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain is made possible by Cooper Steel, a family-owned business that provides the steel fabrications for some of the greatest buildings across the United States. 60 years ago, Kenneth and Faye Cooper founded their company in Shelbyville, Tennessee.
Cooper Steel believes in sponsoring Carol Swain because we believe as she does, you build strong, you stand strong.
What started as a vision and now a nationally recognized and operated company that remains true to its founders' Judeo-Christian values and principles. Cooper Steel is committed to excellence, responsibility, and community. Cooper Steel's motto is, build strong, stand strong. They treat their employees and customers like family. Thank you to Cooper Steel for standing strong with Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain. Learn more about our generous sponsor at coopersteel.com.
I'm back with my guest, the famous Roger Simon. Now, Roger, before break, we were talking about the need to have better quality, at least I'm thinking, legislators and people running on the Republican side.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are certain people we can emulate too that are already, big-time politicians. I'm thinking of Ron DeSantis as an example, the governor of Florida. Also, a man I particularly think is great is John Kennedy, the senator from Louisiana. This guy.
Well, he's funny for sure.
He's got a great sense of humor, which doesn't hurt. There's a famous line from, W.S. Gilbert and Gilbert and Sullivan: to make your fellow creatures wise, you got to gild the philosophic pill, and that's right. You got a little bit of humor goes a long way. That doesn't mean we should run all stand-up comics, but.
Well, Matt Gates has a lot of courage.
Yeah, someone's got to. They're out there, and it's tough for people, but they give up their normal lives and run for office. I was asked years ago. Some people said, "Well, if you move to Palm Springs, we can run you for Congress in Palm Springs," and I went, "No," and it's because. You feel like if you run for office, what your job is being a fundraiser. Right,
that's true. Unless you're independently wealthy and you want to do what President Trump tried to do.
Yes, and that of course limits the pool, because I wasn't independently wealthy and I'm not now.
Well, here's how I feel. Like, people are always trying to get me to run for office, run for the Senate. Mm-hmm. And, I have evaluated that in my head. Mm-hmm. But I believe I can have more influence, reaching people, especially young people, using my platforms, than I could being one of 100 or one of 435 in an institution that I see is very corrupt. I think I can hold them accountable using media and be more effective than if I was in there with them.
Well, I think your argument is good, but I would like to see you run. Now, only because it would be one more decent person in there. I mean, I have the same argument with myself. Of course, I don't have the ability to run anyway here, I don't think, and I don't want to. But I mean, all I do is criticize them all day long. And I write columns, 4 times a week sometimes.
But doesn't that matter, holding them accountable?
Oh, I think it does matter. I think it's better than not. And not everybody can run for office. That's an unfair criterion. But I think everybody can form pressure groups. And I see that beginning to happen a little bit here in Tennessee. And I saw it happen I was down in Atlanta a couple of times to cover the Georgia elections. And I could see that there are two Republican parties, really. There's the Populist People's Party
and the establishment.
Right. And what I think we should concentrate on in these years is getting rid of the establishment.
Right.
If we could accomplish that, we would accomplish a lot.
Well, in a situation where the establishment candidate wins the primary for whatever reason, do you feel that Republicans, to hold them accountable, they should let them lose to the Democrat? Do you think a bad Republican does more damage, than the left-wing Democrat that's predictable in those situations where you don't have responsiveness?
It could be. In many situations, that's true. And I mean, you have to look at each one individually, I think, to some degree, because putting it more simplistically, there are rhinos and rhinos.
I'm not even sure that Mitch McConnell's, winning re-election. I tried to give him money. I am so glad that Rev or whatever it was didn't work when I was trying to make my contribution, because I would be kicking myself if I had actually contributed to his campaign.
When I get feel the same way. I get whenever you get the text messages about 30 times a day from these people.
I know.
When it says Team Mitch, I should have it automated in a race. I mean, Trump has stepped in on that in a very interesting way, and I support it. And that is, he wants you to go through his pack, and I think, from here on in, I'm going to do that, because I don't want to give money to random namby-pamby Republican politicians. That is a waste of cash, whether you're giving them $5 or $5,000. It's stupid.
But there's something else, you know, that was very serious. Did you see the Washington Post article about Republican fundraisers, campaign fundraisers? They take most of the money, especially if it's a candidate, you know, doesn't have any money, sort of like me when I ran for mayor.
Right.
If I had used one of those professional fundraisers, they might take, you know, maybe 60% of the money, 70% of the money.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes it extremely difficult. I mean, it's like 90% of charities are like that. When you give to a charity, all of a sudden you're giving to some kind of institution.
I've learned about these things, and I mean, it's shocking what we don't know and what we accept, and I'm just appalled by what I have learned. I learned some of it by running for office, and then I learned other things by just being more involved in business, and then watching campaigns. And the Republican Party, like, it's the only game in town for conservatives, but it is sick. It needs help.
Oh, well, how about the Lincoln Project?
Oh, my goodness.
When the Lincoln Project, when it got revealed, because I'm not going to name names here because I don't want them to sue me, because I don't want to be in the court. But I knew a couple of those people years ago, and I went, and my instinct was, ooh.
So why did these people come together?
Boy, I didn't have any idea how bad they really were. I mean, that is.
Well, we know they were on principle.
Yeah, I knew that, but I didn't know that they were like stealing, they were sexual predators. I didn't know any of that. I mean, I just thought they were sleazy Pauls.
But they were not real conservatives. They were just people that set up, took advantage of the situation.
As they say in the musical Amber La Douce, the Grisby is the root of the evil in man. And that's who they were. But, you know, I think there's just a lot of that going on an even lower level. They were kind of monstrous. But on level, so we have to have an eye. You ask what to do for the next 4 years. Keep your eyes open and really talk among yourselves about who's legit and who's not. And it's, you know, it's a problem because not too many. The knots are, there are a lot of them.
Right.
And there are a lot of surprises in there sometimes.
Well, we're going to take another break, and when we return, it will be more strategy, real strategy, and we're going to talk about the real reason you and other conservatives have come to Tennessee. Okay. We'll be back.
Dr. Carol Swain's Be the People, a call to reclaim America's faith and promise, newly released in paperback and audio with a new introduction, is a challenge to all Americans. If you are serious about being the best citizen you can be, this is the book for you. From addressing moral relativism to reclaiming the future, you'll understand why Dr. Swain is one of the most relevant voices in today's culture war. Are you ready to reclaim America's faith and promise? Purchase at bethepeoplenews.com/books or wherever books are sold.
The Biden administration's executive order on immigration brings to the forefront one of the most volatile issues of our time. In this timely second edition of Debating Immigration, I join my voice to that of other experts to provide you with facts and information that will help you understand what is at stake for our nation. This edition offers 21 original essays that cover race, religion, economics, human smuggling, and civil rights.
Purchase at bethepeoplenews.com/books or wherever books are sold.
I'm back with my guest, Roger Simon. So, Roger, you are part of a large number of conservatives that have moved to this area, right. Middle Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And I have to believe that it means something special and that there is an opportunity here, you know, not to take back Nashville because conservatives, Republicans, we've never had Nashville. It's always been, you know, blue. It's always been a very corrupt city. And I'm just hoping that all of us together can bring good government to Middle Tennessee and to this city in particular.
Would that be the greatest thing to pull off in the next 4 years?
We can do it.
We can. And you know, a lot of people are coming here because of the red state thing, and Tennessee is a reliably red state. However, Nashville is this blue enclave like Memphis. But Nashville is there for the taking.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, because what it's based on, this kind of corruption, that you see in these books like the Hopewell box and so forth, is systemic and has been going on since the 30s, really. And we can turn it because the populace is misinformed. And also people vote politically by habit. I mean, it's worse than crack. They just, oh, I'm a Democrat, oh, boom. If you can just sit down with them and explain things, and we have to do it. I mean, the great drama, I've been noodling with going back to writing something fictional about the COVID battle over Broadway and the clubs. With Kid Rock versus the mayor.
Well, you know something? Those honky-tonk bars supported me when I ran for mayor, and I think a lot of what happened to them was retaliation. And some people who did not support me publicly, they were afraid that they would be retaliated against, and I think that was part of why they've been treated so harshly. And but yeah, I mean, there's something going on, and COVID was used to squash the mayor's political enemies, the people he thought were his enemies.
And then that survey came out, and they discovered that nobody or very few were getting COVID in those bars.
It was
the honky tonks.
It was horrible.
That's the stuff of a great drama. Also, it could be a musical.
Really?
Because if you did it as that story as a musical, here's an interesting thing. I went to Amsterdam in the Netherlands a few years ago, and a friend of mine who's a playwright and his wife had done another play about Anne Frank. Now, there's a billion stories about Anne Frank, as people know, but this was quite an amazing one based on text by Anne Frank that people didn't know, and they showed the real full story of Anne Frank. And it was done in a state theater outside Amsterdam. Of course, all the tourists had nothing to do at night, or not that. Anyway, a lot of them would go. It was a full house every night. People from all over the world came to see this story of Anne Frank, which was told with more fullness than it's been told ever before, because Anne had her problems. She was a neurotic young girl, too. I mean, she wasn't perfect. Nobody is. But my dream for this thing would be to have a musical about Nashville, about what happened during COVID especially, including your run for mayor, including the recent bombing, all of that stuff, and put it in a theater, and all the tourists would come in, because this is a big tourist town, to see it from all over the country.
That would be wonderful.
It would be wonderful, but boy, is that a hell of a job to set up. So I don't know, I'm just blabbing about it.
But you have started your novel?
No, I haven't. I mean, I never should talk about it. It's just an idea that's been in my head for the last 6 months. But
well, tell me how you write. Like when you have an idea for a novel or a play, do you just one day sit down and start writing it, or just what is the process that gets you from the idea to actually putting something down on paper?
I don't know.
Because it's different for every project?
Well, but basically what I do is, there's a famous line by Gore Vidal, I teach myself the story. So I sit down and I start writing it, and I think, well, maybe that works, and maybe it ends this way, and then I take some notes, and then I write some more, and then I take some notes. I don't have the kind of mind that can do an outline from the beginning and then fill it in.
I can't do that.
But then it loses its spontaneity too. I don't think it's good that way.
Do you isolate yourself, and are you more likely, can you work on several projects at the same time?
I end up always doing that. So, but sometimes it's varied throughout my life. I'm in my 70s now, so I've done almost all different kinds of ways, and I don't have a specific. Years ago I used to always run off to a motel in the desert when I lived in LA.
Right.
And just isolate myself for 2 weeks and
produce something great in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I write very fast when I do it, but then I'm lazy and I won't do anything for 6 months.
Yeah, I understand
but
that.
I think a lot of people are like that. I mean, it's a frenzy when you really do it.
Well, it's such a great pleasure to have you living among us, and with your talent, And then your love for Nashville.
Well,
your new appreciation for Nashville.
To be here. To be happy to be here is the whole story.
Well, I hope to have you back on Conversations, and also we'll be following your work very closely with the Epoch Times and other places where you're writing.
Thank you.
We'll be back after this word from our sponsors.
For those of you who would like to know what exactly our children are facing in their education system, this is a must-read book. It will equip you and prepare you to make decisions about your child's health, about your child's education. So I want to encourage every one of you to grab a copy of Dr. Swain's book and join with me and Carol on the front lines in this critical time to eradicate the liberal abduction of our children.
I'd like to thank my guest, Roger Simon, for moving to Nashville and bringing his talent and his family. I'm so excited about him and other conservatives who have decided to join us in this city and state, but also in the battle for our nation and for our traditional values and principles. I hope you will tune in next week. And until then, just remember, we the people have more power than you imagine. It's still our nation, it's still great, and we can resist the forces that are coming against us.